Madame Bachelet, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. In 2010, the Social Protection Advisory Group, which you chaired, prepared a report, a very important report that then opened the way for some measures and some action that was taken in the following 10 years. Looking back over those 10 years, would you say that the perception of social protection has evolved from being seen as a cost rather than an investment?
Well, the first thing to say is that when the former ILO head, executive director, called for this group, he asked us to provide sort of a diagnosis in which experiences in the world had developed sort of social protection floor, it was mentioned at that time. And so we could see successful stories, what had meant, and recommendation from member states. At that time, there were not too many countries. And one of the reasons that I was invited to is because I did that in my first government. But we did have this report, and where we could see that developing social protection floors at that time, it has sort of a certain short and mid-term results in terms that you can solve particular situations, you can avoid crisis, but on the long term, or mid and long term, it was about human development. If there's been an evolution, I would say yes, and this is linked also to other organizations that have done studies that have shown, and that is a great news, that investing in people is the best investment that a country can do. I mean, everybody always used to talk about human capital, but every time you would talk to international financial institutions, for example, they would mention as a cost and not as an investment. But the World Bank launched last year a report where they say they discovered that if you compare developed countries with developing countries, the wealth of developed countries, 70%, 80% dependent on the human capital. I mean, people who are in well health condition, well prepared, with skills, educational capacity, et cetera, and you compare to developing country, only 30 or 40% of the wealth, you could say it was thanks to the human capital. So they sort of identify that investing in people, investing in health, in sanitary condition, in education, et cetera, was the best investment that a country can do. So I think there's lots of ways because of the social protection work, but because of also other studies that have been done by different organizations, I think today there is an evolution that shows that it is about investment. It is about the best investment you can do in a government. But I have to say, if you look at today's world, and in the last month or weeks, we have seen all over the world sort of a wave of protest, mainly young people who are protesting because of inequalities. Some of those countries do have social protection floors, but people then are demanding more because it's not enough, and some others do not have. And I think to develop social protection systems can support countries also to improve people's life, but also to ensure more peaceful and harmonious societies.
So certainly still some way to go, but an evolution.
A positive evolution, if I would say. We're not there yet.
We're not there, certainly not.
It has. But the other interesting things, if I may add, is that many of these countries are not rich countries. So an ILO has estimated how much would it cost for countries to be able to, develop certain basics for everyone. And it's not, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's something like 0.1.
Yeah, it was like 2%.
Or 2% of the GDP or something like that. So it is possible, and I think that is a good incentive for countries.
It's a matter of political will.
Yes.
In a way, yes. Now, talking more, you mentioned your experience in your first government. You served as president of Chile twice. So I wanted to ask you about, at the local level, at a country level, how do countries and governments work across different ministries, but also with employers and workers' organizations to develop and to promote social protection?
Well, I mean, but you just said the word. I think the first thing is political will, because you need leadership that is convinced that this is really important and relevant. And I tell you this because sometimes you're not going to be able to convince everyone that sometimes reforms need to be made to make this a reality. But if you're convinced that this is the thing you have to do, you try to work it in a way that at least nobody is making an obstacle against it. So, of course, I would say usually in this kind of social protection, trade union usually will be on your side because they do realize the need for improving health, education, because they have to deal with the lack of access many times of their own workers or the family of the workers. So usually you will have it on their side, different kinds of trade unions. On the other hand, with the employers, I would say you could also identify with good arguments to discuss what are the kind of initiatives, particularly when in some way or another they will be felt that some of the things they had could be touched, if I may say. You can work with them to convince them what is the right thing to do, but why is also the smart thing to do. And let me give you an example. In my first government, it was not that much because what we made mainly was to ensure in the pension system reform that it did, that the 1,200,000 people who did not have pensions or had very, very small pensions, I mean, really something that's not acceptable, that we could improve their pension, and we did it through our efforts as a government. But in the second government, we considered that the system of pension was not the right one, that we needed to reform it, and that we needed a commitment on businesses to be part of this process. So we work a lot with them on this. But I would say every day, once more, I would see more and more businesses that do understand the importance of having the best possible conditions for their workers, who understand the importance of human rights in businesses, who understand the importance of the Agenda 2030 and businesses, how they can be an ally and contribute to this, or on environment and business, because at the end, we're all part of this planet, we are all part, and if we all contribute, we will all be better.
Now, moving more to the present, in your current role as High Commissioner for Human Rights, and you've always been a very strong advocate of human rights, how do you approach social protection issues from this angle, from the human rights angle?
Well, I think social protection speaks of human rights. It's like the Agenda 2030. I mean, when we're talking about the right to health, the right to food, the right to education, I mean, social protection is about ensuring that the main human rights of every child, of every human being is really it's a reality. You are advancing a human rights agenda. You are responding to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But I believe that if you ensure this social protection universal coverage, you are sort of ensuring what some people say, I'm not trying to remember the words in English, the minimal civilizatory, I would say.
Yeah, the minimum standard for civilization.
Standard for civilization that we all are ought to receive because we all...
That we're all entitled to.
Because we are human beings. And that exactly is the spirit of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So I think they are really aligned, and I do believe that when ILO started pushing for social protection initiatives, I mean, the General Assembly, that after ILO took this initiative and led it, that it's really a huge contribution to the fulfillment, that is not ready yet, but fulfillment of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I hope we continue going that way. And I will always be championing in this, because I'm convinced that it will mean that everyone could be in the world with the respect and dignity that all human beings deserve.
Madam Bachelet, thank you very much for your time, your work, and your support to the ILO. We'll be seeing you again soon, we hope.
Well, thank you so much, and happy anniversary again, celebrating this time the social protection universal coverage.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was Michelle Bachelet, the UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights, talking to Martin Murphy. And that's it for this show, I'm afraid. The conference is continuing throughout the day, and you can pick it up on our live stream at socialprotectionweek.org. Meanwhile, we'll be back at 4 o'clock Geneva time with some other great guests, including, as I mentioned earlier, Professor Jeffrey Sachs and Professor Jayati Ghosh. So thank you very much for watching us. Hope to see you again at 4 o'clock. Goodbye.